Welcome to Northbound, Alaska, the Trucking Files, a podcast where we talk to haul road drivers, both past and present, to carry on the knowledge and experience of one of the toughest roads on Earth. On this episode, we sit down with Justin Jordan. Justin has been trucking on the haul road for a little over a year, grew up trucking in Louisiana hauling logs, and has over 20 years of driving experience. This was kind of a last-minute thing, but not too many people do last-minute things anymore. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
When I texted you earlier, it's just like Aaron and I were talking about it. It was like, that'd be kind of cool to bring somebody new that's been up here for. How long have you been driving up here now?
Just a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, I started last April, and so made it a full year.
Good deal. Sorry, the headphones were all. I kicked the headphones there. We're just kind of bare bones in the studio here, still working our way up the ladder of getting really nice electronics. Stuff like that. So
whatever works.
So you came up. Was that April of 24?
Yep.
24. So you got to experience a summer on the haul road.
Yep. That was my first experience. A couple of the hills were still iced up, and you're still chaining for a few things. So it was an experience right off the bat. I got into a blow up north like the first week I was here. So coming from Louisiana, that was a big difference.
Oh man, you guys hardly ever get snow in Louisiana, right?
No. If you do, it's gone in a day.
Yeah,
it's nothing like this, of course.
Yeah. So in Louisiana, that's where you're from originally. Yeah. So how did you get into trucking? What was that like?
Oh, when I was a kid, my cousin had a dirt business, and they done ponds and things like that. So I would go do maintenance on trucks for my uncle and work on them and grease them and wash them, and then eventually got ventured out to the job sites. And was on site there, so I was able to drive the dump trucks at 12, 13 years old. And my cousin, one of the other cousins, didn't show up for work, so then I ended up on a track hoe loading myself, and this just kind of went from there. I was always been on equipment and dozers and in and out of trucks and dump trucks, and so it started young, I guess.
You basically worked your way up from the bottom.
Yeah, yeah, I got.
And then just thrown in and go figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. The first day on the track hoe, my cousin didn't show up for work, and he was running the track hoe. And we got up there, and my uncle said, "Well, get up there and load yourself." I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Well, get up. There's only one way you're gonna figure it out. Crank it up and figure it out." He said, "Just don't hit the bed of my truck."
So your hands were probably shaking on it.
So I'm up there on the track hoe, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening here. And I look over there, and he's over there standing on the track of his dozer watching me. And the very first bucket, bam, hit the side, hit the bed of the truck, and he just got back on his dozer and tracked off. So we kind of got started from there.
Yeah. And, did the side of that truck have like wooden 2x in at the top, or was it all metal?
No, it was all metal.
All
bed.
metal. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, luckily.
Yeah.
I put a little dirt on top of the cab at some point, but no, it all worked out.
Yeah, you got to just give it a shot. Right?
Yeah. I went from there into logging, and started out running equipment and running chippers and loaders, and I'd ended up years rocked on there, and I bought a couple of log trucks and got into that and driving them for myself and working on them, and that was real fun. And but it's just been in there ever since.
But what was your first truck that you bought?
I think it was a International 93. Was it a 9370? That was square body International day cab. It was like a 89 model, maybe like a 350 big cam Cummins in it, and that's what I pulled. I had a pole trailer behind it. Wouldn't do but about 55 miles an hour, and As long as it was loaded. If it was empty, it'd run on down the road pretty quick. But that was my first one, and it was a fun one. It was a learning experience, but went from there and rocked on there for a few years and got Max, and which down south Max a big thing, especially in logging. And if you had a Kenworth or a Pete, then you was upper class in the logging end down there. And it's just been back and forth on logging equipment and trucks. And the last few years before I come up here, I was just straight trucks. And I had I think it was a 91 379 that I had before I come up here. Wanted the truck, wanted this one of the trucks I wanted, and spent a long time working on it and fixing it and getting it where I wanted it to be at. And then the insurance rates just doubled down there in Louisiana, and I said, that's it. I was done. So I can't do this, and I called up here and got things moving in this direction.
What color truck was that, Pete?
Black. Solid black.
Yeah.
You still have it?
No, I sold it. I sold it before I come up because I didn't want no excuse for going back. I was making this work one way or another.
So how did you hear about Alaska and coming up here and trucking?
My sister and brother-in-law, they come down and visited, and my brother-in-law's been up here since he was a kid driving, and you both know him very well. But he was telling me about it, and I was like, no, that can't be. And we talked for a good while that night back there on my back porch, just sitting there talking about it, and the insurance deal come up with my truck, and I called him. And I said, let's get into a little more details about this because I'm ready to make a change. And we did, and it's been a good experience. I've enjoyed it really.
So you came up in April. So you've seen a little bit of snow on the hills. Did you spin out?
Well, I got a story about that.
Okay.
And I come up and I rode with my brother-in-law Caleb. I rode with him for I think a trip or two, and then I met up with the man that I work for is Dale Shaggin, and I met up with him at Coldfoot one night. And I had never met him before, talked to him I think once, and we come out of Coldfoot, and he said, all right, let's go. You're driving.
Wait,
okay.
So did you just ride up with your brother-in-law?
I rode up with him.
Okay, and then so you met Dell there at Coldfoot, and Dell says, hop in, you're driving.
Hop in, we're driving.
Oh, man, what was that like?
Well, we're both going to find out we experience each other real quick. I'm going to find out your tolerance level here real fast. And but yeah, that was the first time that I'd even drove a truck with a sleeper on it.
Oh, wow.
All my trucks down south just day cabs.
Oh, wow.
So I jumped in it, and of course every truck shifts different, and it's different. And I got pretty good though. We was headed north, and it wasn't a hazmat load or anything, but we was headed north, and I think it was the shelf before we first the big obstacle I come to from Coldfoot. So we was going to figure out the hill shifting at that point. And I went to downshift, and I was telling Dale about a story about my youngest son because he's a wild little boy. But I was telling him a story about him, and I went to downshift. We got just around the curve there, and I was coming down into my pulling gear, and I missed it. And I dropped down to the next gear and just kept on up the hill. But I kept telling him a story about the boy. I never missed a beat in telling him the story. So we got on up the hill, and a little while down the road, he said, you never even missed a beat in your story. He said, you just dropped down to the next gear. He said, I think you're going to be all right. He said, because you're on a pretty good hill, and you didn't hesitate a bit and just dropped right on down.
Yeah. Do you remember how cold it was?
I think it was probably in the low 20s or so, upper teens.
So decent
at that
traction
point.
at that point.
Yeah. The shelf was good at that point. I think it was mostly all gravel. We got around to the pass, and
you're following your brother-in-law, right?
No, I'm driving. with Dale at that point.
Oh, so your brother-in-law head back south?
Yeah.
Or, okay, so it's just you two in one truck.
It's just us two in one truck. And so we get going, and everything went well, and he drove back, and we talked this and that. Well, that rocked on there for, I don't know how many loads I rode with him. Well, then I come back. And I went home in May, and I come back, and I got into a truck. So I was in the following process at that point. Dale was gone. Like that first week, I come back, so I was following my brother-in-law, which we done good. There wasn't no problems, back and forth.
You guys had similar loads, or how?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had pretty similar loads. Dale come back, and I was following him. Well, we get up. He's coming out of Anchorage, so we get to Chandelar camp, and he's done run out of time, drive time, so we spent the night there. And got up next morning, it's snowing. There's like 6 inches on the ground, and this is all kind of new to me. I'm still looking around, taking pictures. I'm like a tourist. I'm taking pictures and everything. And I said, well, what we need to chain up? He said, no, you still got the winter tires on. He said, I still got winter tires. We got good weight. We'll be fine. Okay. I don't know no better. So I'm following him, and we round the switch back there at the beginning of the pass. And as soon as he got straightened out, he went to wiping his feet right there. So I'm behind him, and I'm still moving. I said, well, you just stay right where you're at.
So he says, I'm wiping my feet pretty good.
and then he just burned out right there. I said, you stay right there. I'm going to come on around you. So I get on around him, and I'm from Louisiana, and he's been up here for a lot of years and doing this. At the particular point that I was passing him, I was talking a lot of crap on the CB. Just telling him, you've been up here, how many miles you been? Just look at Louisiana go. And I'm easing along there, and I made it about 50 feet. I had about 50 feet of glory, and then we were both burned out. We had the road blocked and everything. But, I jumped out, and that's the first time experience of chaining up on the side of the hill. Jumped out, threw a set on, and went on up the hill in low gear.
Who got chained up first?
I did. I sure did. I was wasting no time. Yeah, well, he ended up having, I think he had a problem with one of his set of chains. He went to take off, and I think he'd messed a link or something up on one of the crossbars or something. But yeah, I made it to the top of the hill first. He loves that story.
I think I do too.
So it kind of humbled you right then and there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was because the first thing in my mind was hearing him talk and my brother-in-law talk, and you want to get out. As soon as you get stopped, you want to get out and get something behind them tires. And
did it go backwards on you at all? Or?
Well, I waited just a second to see if it would before I jumped out, and there's a string on what we call chicken leg down south, the trailer brake handle there. There's a string hanging on that handle, and I asked Dale, what's that string for? He said, well, when you're getting bad enough, he said, sometimes you may have to pull that and hook your string on. That way all the trailer brakes are holding. And I said, okay. So I'm waiting to see if I need to use that string or not before I jumped out, but I didn't. It held, and I jumped out and threw a set on and eased on up the hill. But I think over this past winter, I'm still a little hard-headed, and I think I can make it. Well, I'm pretty sure I've probably put more chains on the side of the hill than I have on flat ground. So I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty quick. I'm pretty quick about jumping out and throwing a set on pretty quick. Let's see, the transition of this past year coming into winter, I'd met up with you. It was right after summertime, and I was throwing a set, and I still had my rock tires on. It was the last trip I was making before I was coming home. And Nathan come by me there at the bottom of the pass. I'm putting the set on. I get on the other side and take them off. Well, I met him at Coltsfoot. I said, well, we got talking back and forth. I said, I'm going to follow you. I know I'm inexperienced, and this is it's starting to freeze up, and I'm spinning a lot. So I'm going to follow you, see if we can get me on down there. That was real fun.
That was a good night from what I remember. I don't think we had to chain up anymore after that.
Didn't have to chain up none.
It started snowing, and temperatures were relatively cold with the snow, and so it seemed like the traction was good. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I think we're good. Let's keep going. And you're like, okay, whatever you say.
Whatever you say. I'm following you.
You didn't know you were following another rookie, huh?
Yeah. But I think you were spinning just a couple of times with those rock tires following me. I had pretty decent tires on. But
I've come around. I come around 52 there on the alley. I come around that sideways. It was in that curve. But that's not this ain't a whole lot different, but it's a little different than what I'm used to.
That's when it's fun.
Oh yeah. I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of good experiences.
Did you ever chain up in Louisiana? Did you guys have to?
No.
Never?
I never even seen a set before I come up here.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So what's logging like in Louisiana? Is there a lot of hills, or there's probably not very many hills?
There's some hills, especially in the rural part of the country and in the back roads and things. Nothing like compared to here, of course.
Okay.
But it's a lot of gravel roads, a lot of back roads, a lot of narrow parish roads and things. So I think that helped a lot as far as the transition coming up here. The weights, we hauled a little more than we're supposed to, but the weights, you're logging, you get all you can. But the weights and the top heavy loads and things, and coming in and out of the woods and the mud, and so all that I was used to that. That's all I'd known.
And you guys had lockers and stuff like that on your trucks?
We had lockers. Majority of mine were spring ride and walking beam suspensions. Wow. And so you had to have tough back down there fooling with that. And coming up here, these new air ride trucks, that was nice. I wasn't used to that.
You probably don't want to go back, huh?
No, I enjoy this. I do. But I could see, as far as being a new driver, I could see how difficult it would be for somebody that come from over the road, like in the lower 48, and come up here to this. It'd be a really big difference transition-wise. But coming from logging, it just wasn't, other than the hills and the mountains and the snow and stuff, it wasn't that big of a concern for me, I guess. Of course, you're getting a lot of hairy situations logging, coming in and out of the road ditches and things, and seeing daylight underneath your trailer tires, and things get a little sketchy pretty quick. So it takes a pretty good bit to kind of rattle me up a little bit,
Yeah.
But here recently, I think that's the first time I've actually got concerned, was in a blow. And I was coming up, old man, and I lost everything. I couldn't see nothing. I couldn't see the front of the hood on this thing. And I was like, uh-oh, I done messed up.
So you're climbing up, old man, and visibility's pretty much zero.
Nothing, yeah. And I could hear people talking on the radio, and I'm trying to tell them where I'm at. And I don't know exactly on that hill where I'm at, but I know I'm right in that area. And I had a couple of guys behind me that I knew was talking to me, and I said, you just be looking for my taillights back there, because I'm creeping at this point. I'm just trying to feel for the ditch. But it all worked out. We got on top of the hill, and it's calmed down a little bit. And
how was the slide? Was it blowing pretty good over there too?
It wasn't too bad right there at that particular day.
That's probably one of the number one questions guys ask. How was the slide?
Oh yeah, how was the slide? And I've been, I don't know if it's beginner's luck or dumb luck, but I've had a lot of it this year. I've had a few experiences coming up the slide where everybody was chaining up, and I'm just like, it's good temperature, I'm empty coming south, and I think I can make it. And I'll just ease right on up there. I come in between two trucks that were burned out. One of them was in the northbound lane, the other was in the southbound lane, and at the time, the southbound lane truck was coming up, and he went to wiping his feet and on the edge over there, and this one's on this edge. That's the only place for me to go is the middle, and of course that's where all the traction is, in the middle. So I run right up the middle in between both of them, And they got on the radio, how in the world did you do that? It's a lot of dumb luck.
I've heard that before from Dad. He'll say, take the metal, because guys will be trying to get right on the edge of the northbound or the southbound side.
Which is so different because normally on the edge is where the traction is, but it's like, I guess they use up all the traction on the edge on that hill.
But I will tell you one experience, and I don't know if it actually helped or not, but maybe it's something to try. I was coming up the slide one night, and it was just me. I was just bebopping along there. Wasn't nobody in sight, and I burned out. I come to a dead stop. I was like, crap, I thought it would be pretty good. Well, in logging, the air ride trucks, when they come into the woods empty, you drop your airbags. You let all the air out of your bags. If not, you'll just spin in like little spots because it's all uneven coming in the haul roads and things. Well, I dropped my airbags and turned the traction control on, put it in first gear, and come off the clutch and just let it do its thing. And that sucker went to crawling, and I crawled all the way to the edge of the road over there where the grip was, the traction was, and I took off up the hill.
Wow.
I didn't know if it'd work or not, but I tried it, and maybe that's something y'all could use one day. Try.
A lot of times when guys do that, they'll try to take off like that, and they'll spin, and then they start sliding backwards.
Yeah.
I've seen guys go in the ditch for that
before,
yeah. So that's...
You bring your mic up just a little bit, Aaron.
Oh, am I getting too quiet?
There you are. There you are. You sound good now.
Oh, man, now you got to listen to me.
What were you saying? So you guys will do that, and then they'll get going, and then they'll spin out and go backwards?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did try that once, and I spun out, and I backed up and tried it again, and, man, that thing slipped, and I went sliding backwards.
Yeah, well, I didn't back up. I don't know if that may have some difference to it or what, but like I say, I dropped the airbags. I let the air completely down, and I eased off the clutch, and it just went to barely turning, and I went to crawling, and it finally just kept getting faster and faster, and it finally caught grip and took off up the hill.
Well, and that's kind of the same philosophy too. It's some guys get nervous and they start spinning or whatever, but it's like it's better to have traction than power.
Oh yeah.
And you just kind of creep along, and there's a lot of times on that hill, if it's real slick or I'm slipping or something like that, I'll drop a gear and then I'll go up there 1,000 RPMs or whatever, and it's like there's not enough power to make you spin, but if you can only do that empty, and that's kind of probably shouldn't even say that on here, but.
Well, that's one thing I didn't really know when I was first driving that first winter up here, and I'd have too much RPM,
too much torque. Yeah,
that's what it is. And you're going up the slide, and it's just you're gonna spin out faster with all that torque, obviously. And I remember it was the mayor that told me when the mayor of North Pole was driving with us then, and he had said, get it down to about 1,000 RPMs, which I'm sure Aaron told me that before. I just forgot, but that's when you're empty, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you don't want to cut yourself short when you're loaded, but when you're empty like that, I guess it could work at higher RPMs, but it's trickier on your throttle when you're doing that. But you get your RPMs low like that, and you can just.
Yeah, I was really surprised on these new trucks. Of course, this one here has Detroit in it, and Dale had told me when I was riding with him and driving with him. You can bring these down to like 900 RPMs and they'll still pull. I was like, no way. And he said, oh, yeah. Well, sure enough, we tried it, and I did. And 900 RPMs, it's still pulling up the hill loaded. So that has helped me a lot, being able to come down that far and just, I guess, pull the power away. And that's got me out of buying a few times.
You got to be careful when you do that, though. If it doesn't work, you're dropping 2 gears or 3 pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't, you'll be stopped before you know it. So it's fine to try that, but you just have to have your mind. You got to have a plan B when you're doing that. So. Oh,
this is still let's say it's my first year, and I'm still learning every single trip. But I love it though. It's been a great experience. I've met some great guys up here that helped me a lot and talked me through situations and uphills, and it's been a good time. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's nice when you can work together with people, and you got to have the right attitude when you come into that. It's like you don't want to make people mad right off. Yeah. Some guys come up here with a chip on their shoulder, and then they.
Oh yeah, I've met a few.
Yeah. And it's like you don't everybody's going to need help at one point
Yeah.
or another. So it's like, you can all learn from each other.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. My uncle, they had the dirt business when I was a kid. He was about 6'4", 6'5", about 350, 400 pounds. He was a big old boy.
Wow.
And when he said something, you listened. There wasn't no just letting it go. You listened right then. And he'd always tell me, anytime you meeting somebody or you trying to learn something, he said, shut your mouth and open your ears. That's all you got to do. He said, don't talk, just listen. So I've done a lot of listening over the radio and people talking, and it's helped out a lot.
Yeah.
It has.
Yeah, you got to be kind of selective on who you're listening to, but you can kind of figure that out too when you're listening. But
yeah, there's guys up here that I know I can trust that'll tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. I don't know, and then there's some up here like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I've been talking to so and so that I know, and they said it wasn't. I said, well, it is the way it is. You just gonna run into people. I'm sure they're trying to help.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're trying to, give you their honest opinion, but of course you could be getting an opinion from somebody like me that don't really know. And but so I tell you what I experienced on that hill.
Something worked for you, but it's not going to work
Yeah.
for somebody else. And
I'm first to tell them. I got excellent drive weight, or excellent drive tires, and so I'll make your own choice. You might want to ask somebody else when you get closer, but in my opinion, I would try it. Of course, I'm hard-headed.
yeah, it's funny. When I was younger, I remember one time I just come off the pass and I'd had a big spool on, man. I had 70,000 on my drives, and I met a guy down with the 16G on, and he's like, "How's the hill?" I was like, "It's good." And it's like he went up there and spun out in the switchback, and it's like anymore I tell them what I see. I tell them what the hill looks like. But he was way tail heavy, and I had lots of driver weight, and it's.
they load those blades rear to the back to front on those usually.
Yeah, I usually drive them over the back. I've seen them guys back it up and lift the blade up and then hook the trailer back up with it. But it's still, no matter what, they're just tough to get driver weight with those.
Oh, okay.
So it's.
What's usually the split with something like that? How heavy on the tail are you with a blade, usually something like that, compared to your drives?
I can't remember. It's been 20 years since I've done that.
Oh, come on.
My memory's going away.
But I try to pay attention when I'm on a hill, the temperature. That way in case somebody asks, I can tell them the temperature. I may not have had a trouble, but you may. And I try to look for burnout marks. Going north on the pass and stuff like that, I'll look for burnout marks in that northbound lane, and I'll tell them, there's a lot of chewing up over there. People have been burning out. You may want to throw a set, but it's a lot of learning. I was told from another guy, I didn't even catch his name, but he's an older guy, and he told me, so you're gonna spend about the first 100,000 miles learning the hills and the names and the call-outs and all this. He said, your next 100,000 miles you're going to spend learning the road. He said, so I still got a while.
It takes 2 to 3 years to really know what you're doing. And it's kind of scary that when you get to that point, you still need to be humble.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like some guys, they start thinking they got it figured out.
Yeah.
It's like when I started, Dad's like, after 3 years, you need to stay humble because there's guys that think it wreck or have other issues because I think they got it figured out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that a guy ever has that road figured out.
Yeah, I was on 5 Mile. Yeah, y'all talk about stories on 5 Mile. I was coming south one night with a bulker and excellent traction. I ain't slipped a tire the whole trip. And I come bebopping down through there, and I get to that switchback right there at the top of 5 Mile. And right in them little washboards, right on the high side of the curve. I try to stay over on the high side. Right in them little washboards, they just come to a stop. I was like, what in the world? And I looked in my mirror, and that bulker was already in the ditch on the other side, on the northbound side. I was like, what are you doing over there? About that time, the whole truck slid over. It was get that little bit of a slope right there. Whole truck slid over and in the ditch, and going back, I was going. And it just like that. And monkeyed around there, and I got it in reverse, and it come off the clutch, and it went to slowing up, and I finally got it stopped in the next curve down the hill.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And it happened within a few seconds. It was over and done with. I was like, well, that was nice.
So you put it in reverse.
Oh, yeah. I put it in.
Help slow yourself down.
Yeah, I put it in reverse and come off the clutch to try to help because the brakes wasn't doing nothing. They were just all sliding back. So I just put it in reverse and let off the clutch and let it try to help slow down.
Well, that's what guys don't realize. Your tires have to match your road speed.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on the brakes and you got it locked up, you got no control. It just goes wherever the gravity is, which downhill. But you get your tires rolling and you match that speed, then you can steer.
Start easing on the brake a little bit too. I've learned that.
I think everybody's had a 5-mile experience.
Yeah.
I know I have.
Or they will.
Oh, they will.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hills like that.
Yeah. So how was that blow when you went into it? Did you have one in Prudhoe, or was it just at Canooty there in Old Man?
The one right there at Old Man was rough. It was.
Oh, I was talking about like before when you first came up.
Oh, when I first came up, it was in Prudhoe.
Okay.
And it was in Prudhoe, and I was following my brother-in-law. So it was like my first week of driving by myself. It may have been the first or second day. So I was following him, and he told me, he said, look, he said, I'm just going to go slow. He said, you stay right on the tail lights of this thing, and we'll ease on through here. And we got on up there, and I think maybe, I forgot, with a little mod or something, a truck was blowed over. Right there, I forgot where it was. Like I say, it's my first or second trip, but right there before you get into town, a truck was blowed over, laid over on its side, and I was thinking, oh man, I done got into this now. And after my first month of driving, I experienced a lot, all in one time. So I got a taste of everything, I guess, or a bunch of it. But I needed it though.
Yeah.
I mean that'll help make your mind up pretty quick.
Yeah.
On what if you're going to come back and continue doing this, and shoot, I couldn't wait to get back. I was ready for more.
It's crazy to think it can be summertime, springtime here. You go up there and the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
And it's like.
And it's blown a lot up there this winter from what everybody's been telling me.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's wintertime trucking in Alaska.
Didn't you get stuck up there in a blow at the end of April one time?
Yeah, so my oldest boy, he was born April 30th, 2002, and I was stuck 23 miles out of Prudhoe. So it was May 1st when we got out of there, and it was so it can still blow for a while up there, just because it looks like summer out here. But I found out on Lyndon's radio. They told me my wife had given birth and I was a father. It's like, well, I guess I missed that. I tell everybody he was shaving by the time I got home. That was tough because that time we had inside air cleaners on those trucks, and that air cleaner was plugged up all the way, and I could only idle that thing about 900 RPMs. It was. Oh man! It was just about. I ended up knocking a hole into the air cleaner, just to keep the truck running, and
that was back before the road was lifted, so you had drifts pretty much. All the way out of Prudhoe, all the way to Pump 2, and then all the way over. 70-mile flats.
It was pretty slow going all the way out to. Seemed like it was Pump 2. Yeah, it went almost 40 miles. Before I could get that thing over 1,000 RPMs. It was just, the air-to-air was plumb full of snow, and it was pretty close to having that truck shut down. So it's like, I'm missing my wife giving birth and trying to keep my truck running all at the same time. It's nice to have these outside air cleaners, which I guess, you don't have on those trucks, but...
This thing here's got a button you can push to close the doors on this thing.
You got inside air?
Yeah.
Inside, outside air.
I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah,
I wasn't used to none of that. That was all that was new to me.
Yeah, you got to think ahead in a situation like that, so you don't get yourself in a jam up there. You got to be able to survive them blows and stuff like that, and think ahead and make sure you got enough fuel. And I've seen guys run off the road and they don't shut off a fuel tank or something like that, and they'll run out of fuel because it all transfers to one side. There's a lot of thought that comes into some of that stuff when you get in them situations, and then a lot of it's just experience.
Yeah. Which when I come up here, I noticed, of course, looking at my brother-in-law's trucks and things, the trucks up here are a lot different than what they are down there as far as what they're equipped with here, and the heavier duty, the insulated air, the water lines and everything. I was amazed at all the differences of the trucks. And now I know why. I know why they went to so much extreme insulating fuel lines and everything. It definitely have to have it.
Yeah, I used to use number 2 fuel all the time, all winter. That stuff will gel up at 10 above, and you get the horsepower and fuel mileage with that. But man, you really gotta think ahead. But it's hard to find that good fuel anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, this one here, we just got it back, and it was a fuel issue that it had with the fuel. Luckily, they got it all figured out pretty quick. But I was ready to get back in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice having a new truck.
Yeah.
So you're working for Alaska West.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pulling tankers, ISO tanks, bulkers.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a little bit of a learning curve, would you say, than what you did back home?
Especially with the drop axles and the heavier weights. I wasn't used to none of that. But they started me out with the bulkers, and I pretty much pulled bulkers all summer long. And once I figured out or got shown how to do the drop axle, the weights on each one and everything, and it wasn't too bad. And they are a little top heavy, but I didn't really notice a difference in that and a load of logs behind me. A log truck, especially if you got one double bunked with short logs, I mean that thing will rock all over the place back there. And I've seen drivers come from over the road and get into a log truck. They get loaded with their first load, and they may make it back to the shop, and then they're done.
Oh, wow.
That thing used to rocking so much back there, coming around curves and things, and I mean, you come around a curve too sharp with a double bump, and it'll actually start pushing the truck to the other lane. So if you want to keep it upright, it will. So yeah, I've seen a lot of truck drivers, over the road drivers, and they come and they say, "No, this ain't for us."
Yeah. Have you ever laid a log truck over on its side or anything?
I haven't. I've come very close. I have. I've had about 4 inches of space between the ground and the drive tires on one side at one point, and but it was a chip van at that time, and we took a shear, a logging shear, and it's got a saw head on it, and he just come up there on the driver's side because I was leaned over toward the driver's side, and the road just give out, an old haul road, and it had a wet spot or a spring or something in the road, and it just didn't take it. I come across it, and it just fell out on the drive tires. So he come up there behind me with that shear and pushed on that trailer, and it was loaded. He held it up long enough and kind of walked beside me as we kind of picked it up and get it back on good ground and went on down the road. But I tell the drivers that used to come in there, and especially the new drivers, just don't look in your mirrors. The best advice for you, don't look in your mirrors. When you're coming out of them woods, just look forward. That's it. I said, that trailer's back there. I said, but you don't want to see what it's doing.
Scare you out of the truck.
Oh, yeah.
How long do you think you followed somebody up here before you kind of got a feel for what you were doing?
I think I followed between my brother-in-law and Shaggin, and I even followed Baird at one point. Brother-in-law was down home, and Dale was, I think he was gone out of town, and I wanted to do another load, and Baird said, "You can follow me." Well, it ended up him following me is what had happened. But yeah, I done that for, I don't forgot how many loads. I've done it for a pretty good while, which I enjoyed it. And because you're talking to the person you're following constantly, and they're telling you the names, they're telling you experiences they've had in certain spots and things. So you got to take all that in. That was a good opportunity to take all that in and remember that when you got there by yourself. And
probably hard to remember all that too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because it's a constant. A lot of it's a constant conversation all the way there. And before long, you're kind of reached up there, turning it down a little bit, and not hearing quite as much. But I needed it though. I mean, it was, let's say, 'cause I do remember a lot of it, and it's helped, in situations. We carry out parts and tools and things, and the Freightliner that I was driving, I was coming south one night, and I got right there on Baker. I was going to do a 10-hour out, and wore out, and so I went to sleep, and I woke up to the buzzers going off in that truck. Every buzzer in that truck was going off. What in the world is going on here? I pulled the curtain back. The voltmeter on the battery was down. I said, oh no. So I jumped out and rolled the hood. Sure enough, I lost the alternator. The bearing in the alternator was gone. So I shut it off and got my alternator and jumped out. And it's snowing, the heaviest snow I've ever been in up here. I mean, it was coming down. I was trying to, the intakes on these things are on top of the motor, so I took a towel and threw it over top of the intake. It was filling my intake up with snow. And I changed that alternator out real quick. And I told Dale when I got into town, let him know that I changed the alternator. He said, all right, well, that's good, I said, there's only one bad thing about that. He said, what? I said, the whole time I was out there doing that, not one truck passed by me. I said, I didn't help my street credit not one bit. I said, I'll stop and help anybody, if I see somebody, especially with a hood rolled up, I'll stop and help. I said, I'm by myself. Not one person see me do it.
That's probably the middle of the night, huh?
It was middle of the night.
I hate getting woke up like that. That's the worst.
Oh, yeah. This one here, when he first bought it, I think my first trip, I gotten up north, and it was about 40 below and blowing pretty good, and I'd run out of drive time, and I said, this thing's got all the heaters in it, just rev it up and turn the PTO on, and I raised the RPMs up a little bit more, and so I went on to sleep. I woke up and it wasn't running. I said, oh no, what do I do here? I jumped up there in the front, and I shut it off, cut the key off, because I cranked it right back up, and it was needing to do a regen. I said, well, I've done a parked regen, and it seemed to stay running. Well, at that point, I done got gun shy about it shutting off, so I didn't go back to sleep. I sat there for about 4 or 5 hours, just waiting for my time to come down so I could leave. And then I get to Coldfoot, and I go to come into the north entrance there, and there was a truck coming, so I went up a little further than what I normally would and kind of cut back sharp to give him plenty of room. When I done that, I lost more lights come on, the check engine light and all that. I was like, what in the world? It's the first trip in this brand new truck. And I couldn't give it no fuel. It just wouldn't do nothing but idle. I got down there, and it was late that night. And here I am thinking, if I didn't have to deck this thing up, get it on into town. And I waited for daylight hours and all, and I called Dale. And he said, well, I told him, I said, look, I come from old trucks from down south. I like old trucks, older mechanical things, so I'm not real fond of this new stuff. I said, but I don't like this truck. We got a problem. He said, what's it doing? I told him what it did to me up north, and it was all my fault, every bit of it. But I told him, I told him what happened. He said, you had the PTO on, it won't do a regen by itself with the PTO on. And it doesn't have the pump, but it has the switch for it. And I said, okay, well, that explains that part. I said, but I was coming into Coldfoot, and I lost all my fuel. He said, you turn too sharp, and that thing's got a sway control on it. Well, if it leans over too far, it shuts the fuel off. He said, so that's your fault, too. I said, well, maybe this new truck ain't so bad.
Well, once you know all that stuff, then
yeah.
It's the mental part of that, knowing what's going on with it. That is pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all simple once they was explain to me where I messed up at. But so I've had a lot of experience on trial and error and figuring things out, but it's all worked out pretty well. And so I was pretty slow going, when I first come up, and easing back and forth, and I pretty much got it. I get on back down the road now, where I'm not quite as slow at it, and. But I run with the flow a lot of times. I come south yesterday, and I was falling behind a couple of guys I know from Alaska West and owner operators, and I just rolled behind them. We was just cruising. I wasn't in no hurry. I was listening to them talk and listening to them stories and stuff, and So that was a little more experience I got on that trip, listening to the times they've had. I was just like, it's been really fun. The best advice as far as somebody new coming up would be to really pay attention and listen. A lot of listening, because most of the guys up here that I've experienced, they'll tell you, but you got to listen to what they're saying. And don't just blow it off as you already know, because you don't know. It's a lot different. It's a lot different than what anybody else, anything down south. But if you get in with an older guy like Mr. Lonnie, I like Mr. Lonnie. Because he's the kind, he's pretty straightforward. He doesn't beat around the bush much, and if he likes you, you know it. And if he don't like you, you also know that too. But yeah, I've listened to him a lot and them talking back and forth. But if they will tell you, if they'll take the time to tell you, listen to what they're saying. The older, the seasoned drivers and yourself, and if you're gonna take the time to tell somebody, at least you can do is listen to it.
Oh yeah.
Well, and that's some of these guys are complaining because the old hands aren't teaching the new guys, and really what I see is the old hands are struggling because some of these new guys, they don't want to listen. So why waste your time? I
agree. I don't know how other way to say it, but when I come up here, I was expecting, I guess, a certain level of drivers. And then I got up here, and there's a lot that aren't at that level. They think they know. Then you pass them doing 60 miles an hour, and they're slinging rocks all over you. You're like, come on now, you know better. But the speed and the attitude, sometimes I've run into that a couple of times. I'm not experienced. I know it. I know where I stand. But if I see a problem, if I see a situation that I know is wrong, I don't mind letting them know. You may want to calm down a little bit in that curve. You may meet somebody around that curve like me, and because one night was coming down. Where was we at? Just south of the. One of the bridge crossings south of the Knob.
North Bonanza or something like
Bonanza.
that. Yeah.
And I didn't call out, but I seen headlights coming. I was coming south, so I'd come to a stop pretty much. I was waiting on them. They didn't call out either, which I agree. I don't call out everything, and I don't expect everybody else to. But I seen headlights coming, so I knew there was somebody coming. So I slowed. I know he seen my lights too. He must have crossed that bridge at 60 miles an hour. And I'm sitting right there. I'm like, come on now. You seen my lights,
Was it the south bridge or the north one? Because that south one's got that 40 mile an hour corner.
I think it was the north one, maybe.
Because I know a lot of people will cut that corner there.
Oh, yeah.
That 40 mile an hour corner at the south bridge. And it'll sneak up on a person, you know.
There's been wrecks on that bridge.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've met a lot of people that don't. I guess they really know where their passenger side tires are. I guess because they're riding toward the middle of the road, and I'm hugging the snowbank trying to keep from hitting them. And I'm like, come on now, you got 8 feet that I can see. It's still over there that you can move over a little bit. And well, I'm on my side of the road. I said, no, actually, you're not.
Yeah. Oh man.
And you don't want to get over too far, right?
Yeah, there's so much of this that just kind of, because if it's overplowed or so, you just have to know a lot of that stuff too.
And I've come close a couple times. I've gotten right on the edge, and I could feel it go to pulling, and luckily I was able to pull back out of it. And I thought it was the road there. I didn't know it was overplowed or anything. So I'm just easing right along the snowbank, and all of a sudden the truck takes a dip and starts pulling. I was like, I pulled back, and luckily I got back up on the road.
Yeah, my uncle, he was in a real bad wreck there at that South Bridge, and summertime it'd get really dusty back when it was still gravel, but I think he was a gold miner. That was back in the 80s, but my uncle was going south there, and that guy come around the corner and had a head on right there, and he died right there.
Dang.
And, yeah, there's a lot of... I can't remember all the details
What
of that.
did he run into? What was that, Uncle John or what?
Yeah.
So he rear-ended him in the dust.
No, it was a... He said it was a head-on.
It was a head-on. Okay.
The guy was coming north and coming around the corner, and my uncle had knew his brother or something like that later, so he... Yeah, anyhow, I guess the guy was just... He was bragging about how fast he could make it up there.
Yeah.
You know, I guess... There's been a lot of people bragging about how fast they are, but it's not worth your life.
No, no.
Well, that comes back to that whole thing we've always talked about, attitude, having the right attitude up there. You don't want to be cocky and, because like we've said before, I mean, you could go off the ditch or hit somebody or anything could happen, It's you always got to be expecting another truck or the unknown,
And as far as somebody, I say if somebody like me was to come up, but common sense and common courtesy will take you a long ways.
Yeah.
Listen, use your head. Don't just get out there and crank the radio up and just see how fast you can get up there. Because that ain't going to work out. And it ain't going to take long, and everybody else is going to know you before, in a way you don't want them to know you. But common sense and common courtesy seem to do pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times, there's been a few times where I was headed southbound and I see a northbound truck coming, and so I'll just stop and give them the heel, and things like that. And I really didn't need to, because they were going to be at the pulling gear before they way down there at the bottom anyhow. But now I say, after talking to a few people and this and that and telling me, you don't really need to stop right here, or you don't need to stop here because there's a curb behind you and can't nobody see you're stopped, So I pay a lot of attention to what's going on behind me too, as far as who's close to me and this and that, and I'll slow down for things, maybe some people normally wouldn't, just to be sure there's nobody around that curve. And I have rounded a curve, and there'll be a truck sideways in the road down there, and luckily I was going slow enough where I could get stopped. But yeah, it's a lot of learning.
Do you think if you didn't have the connections up here, you'd still come up here? It's interesting to think it'd be a lot tougher if you didn't have the connections.
Yeah, I think so. If as far as I don't know. I guess I just had it in my mindset that I was going to do it. And once I found out about it, and I said there was no other. I didn't leave no other options. Like my log truck and trailer, I sold them before I come up because I didn't want no excuse to well, this got a little hard, so I'm just going to go back home. I wasn't. That was my mindset. I was going to come up here and do my best I could and make it work. But as far as having like my brother-in-law up here, and I mean, I'd probably never known about it if it wasn't for him, and him taking a chance on getting me up here. And luckily, well, not luckily, but the night that I met Caleb, he was at the house, and we had scheduled to eat, when my wife was going to cook, and I was at the shop about an hour away putting a transmission in my truck. Well, Caleb had just had shoulder surgery, and he told me, man, I felt so dang bad I couldn't come over to the shop and help you, because I was over by myself putting it in. The guy that was supposed to help me didn't show up. So that's a job, putting a transmission in a truck on these trucks by yourself.
Yeah.
But after talking to Caleb, he said, you're putting transmissions in by yourself. He said, I think you have pretty good, mechanical knowledge, as far as, he said, I don't know about your driving skills. He said, but also he doesn't know about the logging. So he's never experienced log trucks. But yeah, once I got up here and got to talking to people and riding and then driving, and shoot, I love it.
Yeah.
Like I say, it would be hard for somebody from over the road to come up here and just jump in it and go. I could see where that would be a big transition problem. But other than that, I got lucky. We got a lot of dumb luck around here.
It's funny. I've trained a lot of guys up there, and sometimes it's almost easier to train somebody that doesn't know anything about trucking.
Yeah.
Up here, but it's nice when you got an attitude like what you have that you're willing to learn. And it's like some of these guys that have all this time, they think they already know how to do it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, man, you have to have the right mindset to come up here and learn that.
Yeah, I mean, been around the trucks since I was a kid, and then driving trucks on and off for 20 years down south. But I knew once I got here, I knew that meant nothing. Other than my little experience with the gravel and the mud and things like that, that meant nothing.
It really did help the experience you had, but it's like, I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you have the mindset to be willing to learn.
And have that knowledge back there behind it too about the snow and the different variables of temperature and tires and shocks and yada yada yada, whatever.
Yeah, because that was a big transition.
Because having Caleb there to tell you, Caleb's got years of experience.
Absolutely.
So having him, give you all that head knowledge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and then now you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Are you going to say something else?
I think the first time that I rode with Caleb up north, we chained up for I believe it was Mackey. And that was the first time I'd put a set of chains on or anything. So I went to his side and I watched him do it. And he said, "All right, your turn." So we all come over here to my side and we're putting them on, and everything worked out pretty well. They stayed on. After that, I think we rocked on there. I think we changed it for something else, and I asked him, I said, "You need me to put yours on too? I mean, what's taking you so long?" I'm done with my side. What's wrong over there? I was very fortunate for him and Dale, and because the information, especially between the two of them, the information is overwhelming. You can't take everything in, but you just do the best you can at listening and trying to remember what they tell you.
And then you're driving along and you're like, that's what they meant.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about.
Well, that's funny because we spent, I think, six trips together
team driving
in the truck. And it's like, I think I talked for 6 trips straight. I don't know if you talked much, but it was like.
I was just a sponge in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how much he really retained, but it's like you don't really realize how much you know sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like. And you're trying to explain this guy had this issue here and this guy had this issue there, and this is my brother. It's like you're carrying on the family name. You can't screw up.
You're going to do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
You better listen to me.
But I mean, a lot of that too. I'd ridden with my dad when I was a kid, so not as much as Aaron. But I heard all these stories. And I never wanted to come up here and truck.
Yeah.
I wanted to run heavy equipment. That's what I wanted to do. But it's like, all right, let's give it a shot. And I kind of like it. I kind of miss doing it.
Yeah, when I come up, I'll stay here for 6 to 8 weeks at times, and then I'll go home for 2-3 weeks. And me and the wife and kids, it was a big transition for them too, me not being there, but being able to go home and just take off for 2 or 3 weeks was an experience that I had never experienced before. And so, I mean, it's been good for all of us, really, and it's all worked out. I mean, they get into their own routine without me there, me not being there, and then I show up and mess it all up.
You think they'll ever move up here?
I hope so at some point. My wife and I have talked about it. And
has she been up here?
She hasn't, and not yet. But we're working on getting it up here.
Bring her up in the summertime first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're in discussions about getting them up here at some point. But
that really helps, especially when you can. Yeah, I don't know. I can't be away from my wife that much anymore. Oh man.
Yeah.
But that's got to be a culture shock. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
It's funny. I went over to my grandpa's house. He's been in North Pole for, I don't know, 55 years or something like that. But he was raised in Georgia, and he was telling me last night. But they went over to Florida to go see their family when they come up. I can't remember if he said 69, but they drove from Florida up here, and it's like he never left. And he's still got the accent, which it's funny. I moved to Texas here a few years ago, and they're like, "Man, where's your accent from?" I was like, "I don't have an accent."
I was talking about the accent. I was having a conversation with Danny up there at Alaska West, and I'd had a little trouble with a guy, and I was telling him about it, and to make sure nothing was come up of it. And he asked me, he said, well, what was he driving and this and that? And I was like, well, he kind of got your accent. I said, but it's a little bit worse. And he said, we don't have your accent up here. And I've met guys out there, we get to talking and getting back and forth, and then they'll say, what did you say? Repeat that again. He said, that Cajun just come out a little bit. I couldn't understand that part.
Well, for you, it's like our accents are different. You're like, man, these guys talk weird. These Northerners.
My brother-in-law, when Caleb come down, and I met him for the first time, I went to laughing. I said, man, you down here in the South. I said, you can't talk like that.
Say that word again. Yeah. I want to hear it.
I had a bunch of guys up here, that have never been down south. Well, they'll ask me, what's it like? What's it like down there? It's hot. I said, it's extremely hot, and everything down there is trying to bite you. And I said, most of it's poisonous. I said, it ain't no fun down there. Just stay here.
Yeah. I shot a snake the other day. My wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, I didn't want to get that close to it.
Yeah, I've been over to Louisiana a couple of times when I was trucking down there, for my brother. And most of the people down there are very polite and nice that I come across. And I was like, man, this is a great place. But that was down in, where were we getting that stuff out of?
Broussard.
Yeah, Broussard. It was down there.
Yeah.
And all those guys are cool. They're like, what you doing, man? They're all like coming and talking to me like, oh, cool. You know?
And got some good eating down there, too.
Yeah, there's some good people down there.
Yeah, but there's a couple of instances up here that I'll be out in town, and we're big on ma'am and yes ma'am, and I said something to a lady one time. I said, well, thank you, ma'am, and she said, well, I'm not that old. I said, well, it ain't got nothing to do with your age. I said, it's just a way of talking, where I'm from. Just yes ma'am, and thank you. And she said, okay, well, I've never heard anybody say that before. And I said, well, you have now.
That is one thing I noticed about when we were staying in Houston is people, they say Mr., they'll say your first name a lot, and that's out of respect. Mm-hmm. And at first it was kind of strange for me to hear that, but I kind of like it now. And like you said earlier, you were saying Mr. Lonnie, and I think that's a great name for him.
That's all. It's always Mr. Lonnie every time I see you. Yes, sir. No, sir. That's it. Let's say I was trying to stay on his good side over there all the time.
Yeah, he's a good one to stay on his good side.
Yeah.
I think it'd be tough to get on his bad side, but I've seen that happen.
Oh, I imagine.
Well, do you got anything else to add, or you got anything else you want to talk about?
I don't. Not really. I guess I kind of covered most of my short experience.
As soon as we shut everything off, then you'll start thinking of things.
Oh,
you'll be driving back.
Yeah, usually when we stop the podcast, we talk for another 30 minutes here. It's like, probably should have just left everything recording, Now we're getting to the good stories.
Well, 2 or 3 hours ago, I didn't know I was doing this, but I had a plan right before I got here.
You like jotting notes down in your head?
It's nice to do it spontaneous. It seems like it's more real that way.
Yeah, they'll pull in here with a dirty truck.
I'll make Dell proud.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, and by the way, if you need your CB worked on, this is the guy right
This
here.
is the guy?
Yeah.
Good. Because I have had problems with that big radio at times.
The first hour's free, but anything after that's $100 an hour. Just so
well, we're going to do it quick then.
Oh, man. It's just a hobby.
Sorry for throwing you under the bus. But.
I do like radios. But.
Cool. Well, Justin.
Yes, sir.
Jordan. I called you Jordan the other day. I was so tired. I was like, thanks, Jordan. I was like, I just went backwards there. Instead of being Mr. Justin, I said Jordan. But thanks for coming on at such short notice.
Yeah, and, I've really enjoyed it.
we'll have to have you come back on
Yeah.
at some point in the future here. We're gonna we got a lot of big plans.
Need try to get Dale and Caleb in here.
Oh, they're on the list.
They are on the list.
This table may need to get a little bigger.
Yeah, we got plans for another table. We got a lot of complaints from a certain tow truck driver about our table, so we got to upgrade this.
We're just still waiting on the donations to come.
Yeah.
This is a whole budget operation. We need a tip jar.
There you go.
Alrighty, thanks again.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
Always fun. Kevin under the bus.